into it. But I'm not too sure if you guys had a chance to kind of think. I've obviously dropped a little bit of information into the above kind of threads just to contemplate a lot on, and more so wanting to come in and kind of hold conversation just by starting out with a couple of questions. And my main thing is health being a conversation so that there's education involved. And then that way it takes something that is quite a large topic, and it just breaks it down according to wherever people are at said time. But then also coming through and just making it available for other people to listen in and maybe introduce them to something that they don't understand. But one of the things that I'm really keen to do, and a huge process that I've been working on over probably the last 5 or 6 years, has just been almost a process of complexity. Because I feel like so often when we come in and we have so much knowledge, or you're trying to break something down, things get made overcomplicated, and I'm terrible at it and I have to catch myself out all the time. But how much detail is too much detail versus allowing the person to just action, and then from there walk out that process. So I kind of wanted to join with you guys and start a conversation, because as in the meeting, like I said, health is something that so many people, whether they're aware of it or not, due to science and stuff like that nowadays, we can actually find out where our bodies are at in a really cool way. Depending on how interested people are, like you can find out your bio age, you can find out your and compare it with your physical age. And I think that that's a really cool development in science within the last 5-10 years, because quite often so many people are like, oh, like, am I fit? Am I healthy? Like, what does that actually look like? Because everybody's not going to want to be jacked, shredded, and running 20 or 30 kilometers every weekend. It's all about meeting people where they're at with their lifestyle and increasing their lifestyle, so that they can then progress through and become stronger and healthier overall. So it's just that conversation and saying, hey, look, I want to kind of start with what I'll put down as a base level of awareness for people today, and then get some feedback from you guys. Because if we're going to deliver this to Ariel and to the broader community, I want to make sure that we've contemplated kind of all the different angles, kind of the Hebrew approach. Like if there's a central subject, which is health, this is my perspective and I kind of want to hear each of your guys' perspective from a way that I can't see. And education works the same way. So 9 times out of 10, people are sometimes doing the right thing, but they don't have the right approach for them. And so it's having that awareness to sit there and be like, hey, look, what's your environment? What's your circumstances? What's contributing to these things? What does that look like? And if we just make small tweaks or small changes, then it progresses them a lot faster than beating up against the bush. And usually that's really disheartening for people as well. And so it's kind of sitting there, and I don't know if it's the same for you guys over there, but the New Zealand health system is what I would call very not proactive. And so you would sit there and say, hey, look, the moment it gets slightly complicated and a pill or something like that can't really fix it, then you kind of just disappear into a swamp of grayness, essentially, where there's a whole bunch of different parameters or different things to try, but the process of cost associated with said things is going to meet you halfway according to the depth that you want to go into it. So that's what I meant by, in terms of process and protocol, starting with the simple things. What is it that people can try before they have to hit last resorts? What are some of the things that are achievable to them? Because our bodies are very capable of healing themselves. I had a thing, man, we're probably going back 5 years ago, and it was a bit of a kick, considering the irony of what I've walked through in the last few years as well. But I was sitting within, I'm a person who has always wrestled, as you guys get to know me more, you'll know that I'm not sit down and say, oh, cool, they said this, I'll accept it for my life. I'm the sort of person that sits down and says, hey, look, well, if we're going to accept this, why and how does it fit? And one of the things that I've always wrestled with has been around health background for you guys. My old man passed away from heart attack. My mum's had cancer. I've obviously snapped my ankle and been walking through rehab process and all of that. And so health is something for me where I sit there and I'm like, well, if prayer's not working, why not? And that was something I very intentionally pursued after for quite a few years. And so one of the things that I kind of had is I was sitting there and I was just watching, and it was that whole thing of like, okay, Lord, like if someone can touch your garment and they're healed, what is it that's associated with it? Or why is it that your words are so powerful? And why is it that when you speak, things happen? And I got like a really clear response back. And I've probably had maybe 2 or 3 encounters in my life where I've been like, oh, that one was definitely not me. And this was one of them. And one of the things was that when Jesus spoke, because he understood how God had created and framed creation together, it responded because he respected and he honored it. So when he spoke, he knew the tendons, he knew the ligaments, he knew the cells, he knew the structure of the chemistry. He understood how all of this stuff was framed together, so that when he spoke, there was actually a response because he was speaking to what he was aware of. And out of that fullness, creation responded. And so it was almost like a challenge towards me of God sitting there and being like, hey, how much do you want to get to know my creation, and how much do you want to pursue the mysteries that sit within it? Because one of the big things for me, and there's a few quotes that I like to use, and one of them is by Alex Hormozi, who's a digital marketing guy. He's like, become so good at something that it's boring. Like you eventually start to notice the patterns, or you start to notice the track record, and it doesn't turn into guesswork. You just get really good at it because you've done it 10,000 times. And the depths within the body is very complex. And so as I kind of jump in and we talk into this sort of stuff, one of the things, and I want to throw this out to you guys as a question, is out of what I put into the main contributing factors of sleep, nutrition, stress, exercise, headspace, environment, and injury. That was that first original post. I wanted to come through and just ask you guys personally as well. How many of you guys get north of 7 hours sleep a night? Do you guys cook your own meals? Are you stressed? Do you do some form of exercise daily? And then are you without injury, or what does that look like? Because I think one of the things that I've noticed and doing coaching, and I actually looked up the figures the other day because I was quite curious, and it's like I've been coaching now for 6.5, 7 years. And in that time, I've coached over 1,000 people, which is pretty nuts to be able to say that. But the amount from when I started of successful was far less than where it is now, because of that knowledge and that increase. So, but my training style hasn't necessarily changed, but the information and the way I communicate has, which leads people to a higher success. And so the language, that's the framework, which is what I want to kind of throw past you guys today. What would this look like to you to deliver this? What is associated with health for you guys? So that when you look at this, and what are the things that would captivate your interest? Obviously, I'm very personally involved in the industry. So you mentioned anything to do with the gym and my ears perk up, or, doing outdoors, but I know that that's not the case for a lot of people. And so how do we as a body of people come together, and what are some key anchors that would hook you in? Like I try and always make something personal for somebody. So it's like, hey, look, I want you guys to be strong for your kids. I want health. I want this. Like, what are the things that make it personal for you guys, so that can be a flow. So I wanted to kind of throw over to each of you guys, and kind of hear about that from you. Do you guys get, starting off with, do you guys get north of 7 hours sleep a night, just out of curiosity? Mark's a yes. Anyone else?
We do.
Yeah. Cool. Aaron and Josh?
Depends on which night it is.
Totally fair. Let's put it as a moving average then. Thumbs up if you guys get a moving average of more than 7. Cool. Steve's like, no, well, I've got too many kids for that. What about nutrition? Do you guys all cook your own meals? Cool. Amazing. Are you guys stressed? Cool. And then do we get exercise in daily? Cool. And so out of this here then, do you guys feel healthy and do you feel strong? Stuff off, Mark. Little rascal. Because I think that these questions, like these are the parameters, and obviously you guys have shown interest because you understand the longevity and the health of it. But as we come through the key factors around the sleep, around stress, around nutrition, and especially the exercise and the quality of movement. And one of the reasons I went into doing health as a coach rather than going and being a physio and going down that line was because of the amount of time and education that's there. And when you think about it, muscle for me is the largest quantity of substance you carry on your body. And therefore, within that, muscle is extremely mineral dense. And so when you hold muscle on your body, you have readily available resources for your body to use at any set time, which is an extremely valuable resource. But one of the other parts that are associated with this is as we go in and we look at nutrition, the body, if we're overtraining or we're undersleeping and we're not putting in the right amount of nutrients through the food we eat, the way that the body can then use that is going to be compromised because it's obviously going to want more substance because it's getting less quality. And I think that that's a really huge thing for a lot of people that maybe we don't understand. You've got so many pills and stuff that people are taking now, but are those pills actually digestible through your body's intestines as it passes through and through the stomach acid? And so gut bacteria is something that I'm really passionate about around microbiome within the body because that is the starting point of nutrient absorbing. And so the reason that I focus so much on the sleep and the nutrition and stress before I've even started down the exercise regime is because it allows me to get to know somebody and where they're at. And those sorts of questions in terms of delivering stuff to people is really important for them to take responsibility of their own environment. Because if a person's always in the seat listening, then if they're from the outside looking in, it shows me that they're not taking accountability for themselves. And so what I try and see is it's like, will somebody take these key points and actually go and action them? Will they actually take these movements and prioritize the time? That's why organization and discipline and stuff like that's a huge part. And I do like a lot of conversation around headspace and like that mental resilience that's associated with prioritizing allocation of time and day, where most of the time we never put ourselves first. But one of the big check realities is that actually, if you're not putting yourself first, you actually can't be the best version of you for everyone else around you. And a lot of people wrestle with it. And I understand that you're going to have stressful times and busy times where, hey, actually priorities just shift for a small season. But what is your baseline going to be to pull you back into that regime or into that headspace? So I wanted to just throw out from what we've talked on already. What are your guys' thoughts around starting with sleep, nutrition, and stress? Because stress is probably one of the biggest things that's understudied. Well, for science, you can't really test stress, but what you can do is there's a lot of markers within blood work. There's a lot of markers within elevation associated with inflammation and all of that stuff that basically speed up the degeneration of the quality of your cells within the body. And that breaks down. And then the more that those cells are broken down, is the faster that it speeds up a response towards sickness or all of those sorts of things. And so, yeah, what are your guys' thoughts from this already? Just around general conversation. And then I want to hear from each of you guys just around maybe two or three keywords of just those anchor words that you think of when we talk about health. Because I want to make sure that if we're going to build something, it's going to be broad, and I'm not just sticking to my lane, but I'm including as all of us as a group of people delivering something to Ariel. Because personally, like I said, I'm really sick of seeing Christians that are overweight, lazy, won't take accountability for themselves, don't take action, ask questions rather than actually going and just researching and doing, and then sitting there getting really sick and saying, oh, look, God doesn't love me, God doesn't help. And it's like, well, actually, we're encouraged that if you take responsibility, you educate yourself, you do action, all of these things, then there's outcomes. But we're all just given these slightly different starting points that are the health in the center, and we can all learn our lane in. But I want to just know what your guys' personal points are. So, Marky boy.
Yeah, I love your approach, Jake. It's really cool to hear. I think for me, what is important back to stress is that it's like whether you cook your own food or not, there's a really big difference between having high quality food and low quality food, right? And it's important to understand how food in a biochemical way affects your gut and affects your brain, because good nutrition is very different from do you cook your own food, right? It's like how much protein, how much fat, how much carbs are you having within that food? How many micronutrients and minerals? Do you even understand food as medicine, right? And then if I expand on the words that if I think about health, for me it's I think it's even simpler. It's input. So what do you put in your body, or what are the things that your body interacts with, right? If you're standing barefoot on the ground, why is that important? What kind of exchange happens between your body and nature? Or when you breathe, right? Breath work, and you've mentioned that before. So inputs, what are the quality inputs you're having? Then outputs, what are the quality outputs you're having? Because whether you're moving or not, that still doesn't determine your health, because you can be moving in an unhealthy way or in a way where you're only increasing the imbalances in your body. And most people um, try to compensate for lack of movement with a lot of movement, like in a very condensed period of time, and it's not good quality movement, and their imbalances only increase and they get injuries. And so it's important to understand what is species appropriate movement, right? What is species appropriate food? And then the third one would be reset. It is extremely important to understand how does your body filter out, or our bodies filter out stress or chemicals or toxins, and how to empower it to reset well, because most people are overstressed because of poor inputs and poor outputs. So yeah, inputs, outputs, and reset would be the three words that I feel like are the foundations of how it all works. And yeah.
What hooks you into health though, bro? Like if I put those words out, I'm probably going to just leave people confused. Like if I said, "Hey, come and join us for inputs and outputs," like
I see.
so what are the things for you? Like if you for you personally, like like are you wanting to go and like family, are you wanting to go or be strong and masculine? Are you wanting to appearance? Like what are the things for you that would make health motivating to put effort aside for?
Yeah, I think if we were designed by the creator and this is his temple, part of it is stewarding what you have. It's like
Mhm.
your family, your relationships, your body, your finances, your like it should be all part of stewardship. And if you're a poor steward, you're gonna have a miserable life. So I want a good life. So I think all of the above, all of that you said was family, legacy. If I don't understand how my body works and I create imbalances when I do have children, it'll be passed on to them, and they'll have to deal with it. If I don't look after myself, the quality of my life right now will decrease with time because of entropy, right? Uh, and then if you it's a resource. If you're full of energy, it is so much easier to harness creativity to build things.
Mhm. Cool, bro.
So
Thank you.
I think yeah, it's my if your body is your avatar in this human game of life, if it's if it's upgraded well, you can use it well.
Love that. Carla.
Um, I might come at this from a very different angle. So maybe just some context. I'm a registered dietitian, but I've actually worked in the health system for 10 years. And
Cool.
at the moment, I'm working for a behavioral change platform, like a health promotion company. And we have a framework that I'd be happy to share about how we think about this, but people change for different reasons. Um, so we do a lot of behavioral science, and we understand that lifestyle are the pillars and what the lifestyle changes are. So the what you put in, I think, is quite straightforward. It's almost the how of what would a so what I've been meditating on is what would a health system look like if Ariel created a community for that city that Robbie shared. Um, so that's really been capturing my mind. But I think before I pull it all the way back to like a health system and all its key things, maybe just to understand how do we want to deliver this? Do you see it as an individual coaching thing where you take one person through a journey, or is it setting up a health system with all its pillars for a whole community from birth to so maybe just because I think the pillars that you're focusing on is right. Those are definitely things that people need to know about. But I'm very aware of in my industry that just knowing the information doesn't make you want to change. And
Correct.
if exercise hooks you, it's not going to hook everyone. So if you are going to, it depends on how you see this materializing. But if you want a program that you say this is the Ariel health program or the lifestyle program, it has to be things for everyone. So lots of frameworks and things that you can think about it, but yeah, because we have some telephonic health coaching, we have a massive screening program where you do all the checks that are needed and then the reports that go with it. But even having all of that and being a paid for program that people opt into, they don't use all the benefits that are available to them. So changing behavior, it really gets my brain ticking. So I think as we go through the conversation, just to understand how we see this landing and what role it plays will help give me some ideas of how to input, but I'm very like zoomed out. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think and this is always going to be the wrestling point is the systems. I love systems, and one of my big things is sitting there and like you can put all of the resources out, and people aren't actually going to take them. I think like on average, probably you're looking at 25 to 35% of what you put out will get used by somebody. And is that because of their use of knowledge, of their awareness, and all of that? But the duration of time, and that's why I love what you said about the community, is that actually if you spend enough time around people over a length of time, you'll hear those conversations, and at some point when you're ready, hopefully it lands. I would like you.
That's an example of a healthcare system that I really like, where they create nodes, and each node or collection of people, and Ariel being virtual nodes is probably the right way to think about it, but you'd have community healthcare workers that are trained in anything that touches life, and these people literally just check in with everyone in their node, and when they pick up things, they can refer it to the people that are skilled in it. So they have a list and they check, are there children in the family? Are the children growing well? Are they eating well? Are there any issues with food? And if there is, send them to the dietitian or the whatever. So I think having those nodes might be one way that works, that then sort of refers into a group.
That's cool. And I think like this is the and this is why I think this meeting's really cool, is to sit there and be like, one, like I'm the sort of person where I don't shy away from a challenge. I'm like, if this is going to take 3 years to build and it's done well, then I'll walk out the journey. If we sit there and say, hey, look, let's set up a global health system. One of the big things for me that I'm really watching is around the quality of AI, because the amount of data and the tracking that can happen within those systems is ridiculous. Like Erin's working on a project with us at the moment, and she's using AI to do so much of the work that genuinely will probably actually take a person a year. And you're what, 2-3 months in, and you're like 60%, 70% through. And so it's like, how can you take these things, what parameters, and this is why, like, I know it sounds like real data specific, but what parameters are vital towards somebody's longevity? And that's why I think, like, I would love to somehow get away where part of that screening process would just be like blood work, a genetics test, and then from there, it's like the person's going to have an idea, or the practitioner has a really good starting point of where said person is at. Because it's like, oh, hey, look, this area of your blood work is so far out, but it doesn't match with your genetics. So actually, we've got parameters to move within. But I genuinely see that as just normal data, and I don't understand why we couldn't get some form of algorithm, some form of AI to come through and basically present that data to a practitioner, which saves the person hours worth of their own research to then look over it. And so it's just that data presentation that I think is currently lacking, because any health system, like, and it's why I'm being so careful with my own business at the moment, because if I open my doors, my books will be full, but it means that I won't be able to build something that, because hour versus money or time is the current system that's established. And so when I look at global businesses that run multi-billion-dollar companies, they've got the systems in place that run it all, and then they look at it and they go here and they do that. So how do we replicate that for a health system, where, as terrible as it sounds, take the humanity out of the human and look at the data and what's actually sitting there, because it's always going to be personal to the person and their hardship. But the joy of a practitioner is to sit there and say, hey, a little slap, here's a bit of this, try this, because of that outside view. And so, like, that's the stuff where, like, community, extremely important. That initial testing, like if we're to bring people in, I'll just quickly, I don't think you can share photos on Zoom, but one of the things that I have got set up is, okay, I'll drop this into the health chat, and then you guys can have a look at it. There we go. So that there is a, how do I make this big again? There we go. So these are just some of the areas, and like obviously too much information is going to overwhelm people. And so that's my big thing that I would love to hear you guys is, there is 10,000 topics that we could discuss. What are the top 10 that we try and put into a group as an entry point for people to hold awareness on? And so like within fitness, like I've tried to put it down to 5. And it's like you got your general well-being, weights, cardio, hip mobility, and then your form and technique. Within nutrition, food balance, which is what Mark was talking about around your fats, your proteins, your carbohydrates, and all of that stuff. But like you said, you bring this many people in, you add 100 people to this group and they all have questions, it's gonna take a lot of your time. And so what would it look like, or how do we lead by example, and say, hey, look, just come and sit in on the journey, take your time, kind of like Ian's process. He's like, look, I've created this content and this data, but I kind of want to do a better job than what's currently established, and sit there and be like down to the thing. And like, you look for a topic, we've got it. You want to find this, we've got it. This is here, and what does it look like? But I genuinely would love, my idea then the next 5 years would be that each person that comes in has their own AI bot that almost walks alongside them through the process and the journey. It's obviously just one bot, but it has the capability. Each person comes in, it essentially creates a profile, holds all of that data, and then when somebody comes to them with questions, it can then reference said data and create an output as a reference point, which is a very large program and establishment to be set up. But yeah, that's kind of my general thoughts. And I'd like, obviously, this is meeting number one. Thoughts can be as big and as broad as possible, but at the end of the day, what point do you open it up to people? And what level would be a base acceptance for allowing that stage to happen?
My suggestion would be to maybe put a questionnaire together where you ask the community, instead of building everything for every eventuality, rather figure out what you're dealing with. So there are validated questionnaires for stress and anxiety, nutrition questionnaires, things you can ask around exercise, etc. And then also ask things about the interest for genetics, the interest for support from Ariel, and then look at what they give you and then design for that and build out from there, would be my suggestion. We don't have to. That makes sense.
Totally. And I think that that's the my weakness is that I can view all of this stuff as strength and weakness. I can view all of this at once simultaneously, and I can watch in real time and watch all of the influences and pick them apart. Bringing that down to in that one moment of that initial construct is why I kind of wanted to start this group, is to sit there and be like, look, it's big chat, there's a lot of conversations, but you put a group of people together and basically it's the iron sharpening iron. It's like if I put 100 bits of data in, let's cut the ones that aren't needed backwards and forward via conversation. And from there, and exactly like you said, the health questionnaire or the general questionnaire out to the community. Because I think that that's the key point, is it's like within any sort of business development, you do your timeline. And so it's sitting there and being like, hey, look, guys, what do you want phase one to be for us to focus on potentially? If you run it like a business model, you focus on building that, you release it. Now here's phase two. These are the potential options. Yeah. And what were things for you, Carla, that you would associate with health as well? I don't think I got that from you either. As motivators.
Well, so at work we use the 4-4-60 model. That says 4 of the main lifestyle conditions: nutrition, alcohol, exercise, mental illness, lead to 4 of the main chronic conditions. So where I work at the moment, it's all about prevention and health promotion. So that 4-4-60 model, and then the 4 chronic conditions, heart disease, lung disease, cancers, and diabetes, are responsible for 60% of deaths worldwide. So if you ask someone what a healthy diet is, most people will know the answer, but they don't do it. So it's unpacking those reasons. Is it finances? Is it culture? Is it perceptions, beliefs? Is it your situation, etc.? There's so much to unpack in each of those. So our strategies are built around empowering people around those lifestyle pillars. So when it comes to health, those are probably the things I would focus on. Smoking, that's the first one. Sorry.
And for you personally, what makes it personal for you? What are the things that you pursue health for?
For fun, to get out into the amazing trails that we have in Cape Town. So
Cool.
in Joburg at the moment. And food is quite a big part of my culture, but doing it in a way where it's also nourishing people, it's quite powerful. So being able to share that drives me. And yeah, professionally, I just want to help people not get to the point where you don't have a choice about what you're eating anymore. You have to eat a certain way because there's now disease and things that you deal with. So preventing it, and very often it's small tweaks. I find that people overthink what it means to be healthy. So helping people get out of their own way. But other than you, like, I'm not a one-on-one person. I get tired from that. So I went upstream in my career working on policies instead.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's amazing though. And I think that that's the key of having this is doing this. And it's like different strengths and weaknesses and different parameters. I think it's really key. And I'm the sort of person where it's like I don't ever mind starting something. And I think within that, the team that's associated with that is so important and so vital. And I like starting conversations and then stepping back and listening and then just asking questions. So that way it's like exactly what you said around like the diabetes, the heart attacks or the cardiovascular, all of those sorts of things, like those parameters, what stage, like another part is it's like if it's going to be family motivation, how do you start with your kids? How do you like what's the different training style? Like how the heck do you motivate a kid? It's like they don't care about the data or the information, it's just got to be fun. So like there's all of these different parameters and approaches where I just sit there and it's like I want to make sure that there's not an area that's been missed in conversation, essentially, where it's personal for somebody that they show up and they're like, man, this is the reason I do it. And I'm like, oh, sorry, we haven't even thought about that yet. Which is why I want to ask this question about like, why is health personal to you? What does it mean to you to be healthy? Like, has there been a time in your life where you weren't healthy and it really made you value health? And I think those sorts of questions, or you can almost guarantee that if you ask somebody, tell me somebody in your family that's unhealthy, there's probably going to be an example in the family line where that's the case for most people. And so those sorts of things there, it's like like what are some of the base parameters that are associated with health, and that whole thing around like nutrition, stress, exercise, and that dynamic I think is really really key. So I appreciate that, and the system side of it, like I love that, especially the policies and stuff too. It's amazing. What's some other people's thoughts? Where is everyone else kind of sitting at within all of this?
So I consider myself a complete rookie in all this kind of
Cool, bro.
stuff. And similar to you, and I think actually with most people that have kind of are more exploring this arena of health, it's almost come too late because their body, I'm astounded by how resilient the human body is, right? And how much we can fill it with crap and we can keep going and keep going and keep actually, you know, and then you get drugs to, you know, just do you know what I mean? Just cover the symptoms, basically. Deal with the symptoms, not the cause. But I think a lot of people don't get to this point until it's too late. Until, like you said, pharmaceuticals aren't working, yeah, and you're just left in that grey area of now what? And your only other option, sadly, is to go private, to go through dietitians, naturopaths, whatever it may be. And that's the sad reality of it, because I think 90% of people don't do it until it's too late, or they kind of just keep getting pills until they die because it just covers symptoms, and they never really bother because it's just easy, right? I don't need to dig a little deeper to the cause because the tablets are doing a job until they drop. Like my dad, for instance, he's had a thyroid problem since he was a teenager, and they used to find him asleep at his desk at work. But he's 60 and now, and he's been on thyroid tablets for his whole life and never really bothered to dig any deeper into it because it's been doing its job,
yeah,
without really recognizing any side effects. And I think, and so for me, that is completely the case over the last 3 or 4 years at least. I think I agree with everything you're saying, Jake, completely, and everything else that's been said, and I'm just listening as well as learning. But I think the one thing when talking about health and defining health, and this isn't completely it, but I think in my research over the last how many years, like the mind is so key. Like, and that's what it's talking about. Like 90% of diseases start with stress, and actually that stress is starting from our neurons, which therefore we're not dealing with trauma properly, we're not dealing with our emotions properly, therefore we get sick. And therefore you can, and I'm not fully made up my mind on this yet, but you can have healthy people that may work out, may eat well, but because they're not dealing with their emotions, they're not dealing with their trauma, they still can't handle life. Like the amount of people I work with that have been well, but stricken with big diseases, and because I work closely with them, I know the stuff they're not letting go of within themselves, the forgiveness they're not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
right.
so I think for me, and I'm just and I completely agree because I've had transformation from diet, transformation through so many different things, and I have a high regard on it. But one of the biggest things that I've found is the mind, basically, and actually digging deep into that, and actually, because the body's got to do something with it. It's got to do something with trauma, with anger, with shame, with guilt, and if we aren't expressing it in a healthy way or dealing with it, or your body will suffer. And I see it time and time again with people around me, and I can put my finger on it. But actually, I think they just think, it's just is what it is. Can't do anything about it.
No,
Um,
I love that, bro. I think that and this is why I love the framework of like body, soul, spirit, is that we've got to govern over all three. And I mean, obviously the conversation thus far has pretty much been around the physical aspect of it. And so you've kind of gone into the soul realm within what you're talking around about how to govern those things and the weight. And I think one of the other interesting things is that if you don't learn to approach this element, so many people in fitness are actually pushing their body because they don't want to deal with that. But then they're actually overstressing their body, which then increases inflammation because they're overtraining, they're overworking, they're doing all of that stuff. And then that actually adds to it. So then they've got body and soul that are compromised because now you've got raised inflammation from overtraining and overstress and not having recovery time. You then got a mental capacity or the house within which they sit that's also compromised. And it's just like you've then got 2 out of the 3 pillars in terms of body, soul, spirit that are at a really challenging spot. And so I think that those sorts of conversations I think that that's the hardest thing is sitting there and when somebody's mind and it's a hard one because it starts with education and awareness. And so it's like, somebody could sit there, like your work colleagues, for example, and they have no concept of emotional intelligence. It's just there's just this frustration that just sits there that I can't quite figure out. And you can't see it, they can't see it. And therefore, the community aspect that Carla was talking about becomes really important because it's in these conversations where they're like, that's the thing, like, holy crap, like, oh my God, they just put words to the thing I don't know. And that process then gives them that anchor to then walk out. And I think, yeah, like I genuinely sit there and I think that sometimes less is a lot more. And I think that that's something in today's world where everyone's trying to put 10,000 things in front of people. And it's like somebody doing a walk. Like that's what I love about journaling. Like I get most of my clients to journal or write something down because it's like, can you frame what's inside your mind? And can you spend 2 minutes a day, like just sitting there and being like, what was the highlight of your day? What was your biggest frustration? And what's something that you want to implement tomorrow? Like 3 really, really key factors. But that way, is there a track record? I've got I'll drop it into this group for you guys as well, but I've got like a lifestyle calendar that I put out a couple of months ago. And basically, it's just over a year, it tracks people's sleep, nutrition, exercise, all of that. And they just have to put a tick or fill it in. And then that way they get a visual representation of their track record to be like, man, I've been so good. Oh, wow, I didn't do anything for nutrition. Or like, that's a real, and then they get a visual response to their thought. And it's quite confronting, but hopefully there's enough there to sit there and then make some awareness or put those sorts of things into parameters. But I think conversation and heart, bro, like one of the other things that I've got sitting in here is environment. And I mean, like, I love Carla's like, man, like, I love our environment. I love where he sit. I just want to get out. I want to go on an adventure. And I'm like sitting in like inland New Zealand, sometimes where it rains and the sun don't shine. And I'm like, that place is depressing as frick. Like, I wouldn't want to be exercising. I wouldn't want to be motivated. And I'm a coach. Like, you're going to have to come and drag me out and do that. And so, like, those are the other sorts of things. Like it's well and true for me to sit here like in Hawke's Bay or where Mark is, where it's sunny and all of that stuff. And it's like, but not everyone can be in that environment. You can't always remove yourself from an environment. So what are some factors that you can put in? And those are also other things that I think about. And that's what I love about science stuff is there's like the red light therapies and all of that stuff, or how do you boost like chemical reactions like your dopamine responses or your serotonin responses, so that you can kind of almost give the body a little bit of guidance through said journey. And I mean, meditation or prayer and those sorts of things are really important, but family line stuff and that trauma that you talked about as well is something, man. I've walked through the stuff personally too. Like, I think every person can tell a story based off their family line, you know. But it's sitting there and just being like, hey, look, like, most people don't ever sit and think back to what are the things that my parents have tried to walk through, so that I didn't have to, and then what am I taking on board as my responsibility so that my next generation doesn't. And if we slowly chip away and we work at that as teamwork, how does that then do that? And I think family and conversation around those things are hugely important. So I'm grateful for you bringing that up, and also your point where you talk about the resilience of the human body. It genuinely fights to keep you alive 24/7, and like you said, like, most people don't realize until it's too late. And it's a hard thing. Like, it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's like, it's never, like, very rarely does somebody sit there and have a really life-changing injury or something really dramatic happen that wakes them up to where they're actually at. And we're not really in an environment where we are physically tested anymore to realize how much we've slipped, because most of our lifestyles are pretty sedentary. Whereas, you know, if something's chasing you and you can't run away, it's pretty clear that you've particularly lost some fitness. And so those kind of dynamics of back in the day versus where we're at now, it's like, we've got vehicles, we've got transport, we've got food delivered to our doors, we've got all of those things. And those base indicators of, oh, I actually need to do this, have become at a 1% in comparison of what it used to be. And so those sorts of things, as well as, it's like, how do you, and that's why it comes back to the community side of it, which is why this has kind of started. And I mean, a huge part of it could just be that once a month, kind of like how Ariel does the call, or quarterly or something, we just have a chat amongst us where people can just re-listen and hope that it encourages some conversation and some awareness, and people can kind of put stuff in and have those chats as well. So yeah, what's something for you, bro, that you say you've just started on the journey in the last few years doing research? What made it personal for you, if you don't mind me asking?
well, it's a good. Well, so it really goes back about 20 years, to be honest. But it's kind of really got my attention 3 years ago. So I've always had skin issues. Yeah. So she's here as well. She's just got back from putting the kids to sleep. So 20 years ago, let me start 20 years ago. 20 years ago, 10-year-old boy started losing my hair. And so alopecia kicks in and I lose all my hair right as I'm going, well, probably like 10 years old. And there was always just, you know, I'm English. The healthcare seems similar to what you just said in New Zealand, really. And basically there was no real answers apart from, are you stressed? And I was like, well, I mean, how does a 10-year-old boy know if he's stressed, right? It's just like, I don't think so. So all my hair completely went and did go, and obviously has gone for the last 20 years or so. But up until about 3 years ago, I stopped being on steroid creams. So I had eczema my whole life as well. And for whatever reason, I just said, actually, I'm going to pull the plug on these creams. And I'm going to go a different route. I just laying in bed one night and said, I'm going to chuck them all away. And I just thought, let's just try something else. And little did I know that after being on steroid creams for 20 years and the doctor's giving you them like sweets for 20 years, your body reacts terribly, absolutely terribly. And so it goes into a thing called topical steroid withdrawal. And so you're just desperate, you know, you're desperate for anything to help. And prayer's not working, you know. And every time I did pray, it was like, he just says to me, this is the path of healing. It's going to be a path of healing. It's not going to be a boom, you're fixed. This is the path. And so desperate times, desperate measures, you look in every single avenue, and all the research that I've done has just led me back to just health in all its simplicity. In all honesty, it's like the things you're talking about: the basics of sleep, the basis of sunlight, the basis of grounding, nutrition, exercise. It's not rocket science. And just digging deep, but equally with me going back to my childhood and actually looking back to that young man, I was ridiculously stressed. Like, and I'm not surprised at all. My body started fighting against itself, as well as the skin condition on top. So with all that kind of blowing me out the water, however many years ago, yeah, it just caused me to dig deep really, and to go further into things and look for answers. Rachel's always been very holistic, very natural, always been very much like, yeah, just calling us to go that avenue really. So she's much more in it than I am, and she's kind of been just my doctor really, more than anything. And that's kind of how it started really, and that's really how I've just started. Like I say, like diseases don't happen overnight, right? They build up over time, and so for me now, the healing process is a time thing. It's taken 3 years for my body to start to have a little bit of normality again. And it's been crazy, but it's been wonderful at the same time, because you can see again the beauty of the human body and how it is designed to heal itself. Given the chance, it's designed to heal itself, and it does heal itself when you can deal with a mixture of, like we're talking about, exercise, diet, but ultimately as well, for me, I've got a lot of trauma to deal with, a lot of that kind of stuff that's been stored in my body for so long. Parents' DNA, stuff we talk about with Ian, right? It's your generational stuff that needs to be dealt with, and it's just like this overwhelming path that will take probably a lifetime, but it's ultimately brought a lot of freedom at the same time. So.
Yeah, I love I mean, I don't love the journey, but the enlightenment of taking responsibility, walking it out, and all of that stuff, is man, you never sit there and want to change it, but man, it'd be nice to not have to walk through it. But I think, like, even within that stuff, bro, like I sit there, and that's why I love, I don't know if you've ever looked into like epigenetics and stuff like that, which is a really, really fascinating. Like, if you're at a young age and you've got something that's shown from a young age, like that's where it's like, hey, look, like what has been passed down genetically, and maybe there's just some of those epigenetics that are switched off or not quite responding the best way. Certain light therapies as well for like skin health, that like the near infrared is really good for like the skin stuff and all of those things. And the other one that I'm researching at the moment, I'm like 6 months into research, is just going around all of the heavy metal toxins, and doing like all of those things. And so once I get back, I'm going to do a test for the practitioner around here, and it's just, once again, like it's just not a cheap option for so many people, which is why it's like last resorts. Is it's like, where can we start? And it's like your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise, and if they can kind of do, and then you can chip away at those things, then you've got little information. Because I think so many people are scared of the overwhelming amount of data, but it's like, how do you make it so you can walk the journey slowly and it not debilitate you? And it's like, it's that encouragement to sit there and say, hey, look, like very rarely is somebody going to be able to sit there and say, hey, this is the thing, this is the cause. Even from a muscular perspective, you have a muscle that's switched off, everything else compensates. No, like even now, like I've done a lot of research, but it's like muscle testing and stuff like that. They don't have a way to sit there and say, that's the muscle that's not firing properly. We need to increase that capacity by 20% so that everything else can relax. Like it's not at that stage of science yet. And I think it's the same thing within genetics and environment and sleep and all of those parameters too. So I think the personal journey of where people are at and what they're walking out, that's what makes this hard. And Carla would see this all the time within her work, is every single individual circumstance is unique, and it's the education and it's the systems and it's the things in place to sit there and offer, probably more so support, is probably the main thing that comes out of all of this, is people almost just need the support and access to. This is the hard part, and this is almost where I'd love to kind of see Ariel go, is like, what would it look like if we had a way of delivering these things that aren't usually readily available to people, or like what would it look like that if hope's lost, there's hey, here's a 1 or a 2 month trial plan of walking through a bunch of things to get some information to see what's sitting there, like rule out the facts, like actually this person's just been a lazy little rat bag, they're actually not doing anything for their life. Let's just start there. Like, you're not going to get it if you've just been that, but that whole parameter, like there's just so many different things, and that's why I wanted to start these conversations now, especially with a small group. I think there's power in numbers, but you put too many voices into a small group and it just gets noisy right off the bat. And I love that we've got a mixture of clinical experience, people doing self-research, and people that are sitting here and doing a bunch of different things, because within that we get that broad spectrum approach, which I think is really cool. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, cool.
Who haven't we heard from? Aaron and Josh, or Steve, or Sharon? If you guys want to chuck in your where you guys are at, would be amazing.
We can jump in, I think. I love this. I love listening to everybody's perspective. I love that, Carla, you're a certified nutritionist, and love to hear your take on what you feel like people should eat and shouldn't eat. There's so much misinformation out there, and it's really hard to, take out the bones and just keep the meat of all the things that we're hearing. From 1 month to the next, eggs are bad, eggs are not bad, coffee's bad, coffee's not bad. I mean, it's just one of those things. You're just like, what do you believe? Who do you trust as sort of your health gurus? Really does determine a lot about how you end up pursuing, health in a lot of ways. So this is really, really cool. For me, the motivations, I think, is to be a good steward of my body, like Mark said, and also to enjoy life with my kids. I've got 5 kids. Steve's got me beat, but it's it's all good. But I mean, I really want to, like, I have a goal this year, and this is going from sedentary with metabolic syndrome to this winter I'm going to be snowboarding with my kids. That's my goal, and so that's like motivating me. And to be part of a group like this is also really cool, because there's kind of an inherent accountability and check-in type with this, because like Aaron and I, we both think that whenever we are in a room as a tribe, we should be the healthiest and the wealthiest people there. Like, this should be something that is like, we walk in a room, and because we have been such good stewards of our body, and have engaged with it, all 3, body, soul, spirit, we end up being like all eyes on us. And this is not a cocky or an arrogant thing. This is how we should function as sons, I think, who have taken their body and given it what it needs to thrive. And like Nathan said, just like, your body's so resilient. If you just shift a few things, everything will start snowballing in the opposite direction if it's going negative at that time. This is really awesome for me. You want to add?
Sure. My health journey has been pretty reactionary, I feel like. When I, probably about 10 years or so ago, I started developing a allergy to the sun. And in Washington, we don't get like regular sun. And so every year I have to recondition my skin, because I break out in hives and rashes from the sun, and it's super, super painful. But this wasn't something that I always have had. And then I also developed an oral allergy where most green vegetables, and I know this is probably counterintuitive to what most nutritionists would say, but most green vegetables caused an oral reaction for me, inflammatory oral reaction, as well as dealing with kidney stones. And so we had gone from eating the standard American diet to we tried paleo for a while, and then we tried keto, but neither one of us, I mean, after having 5 kids, I had gained obviously a significant amount of weight from having kids, and trying to get back to a healthier weight. I didn't lose anything on keto. And then I heard from a friend of a friend that she cured her sun allergy by eating carnivore, which is a zero carb, low inflammation diet where you basically cut out all inflammatory foods and reset everything, and then you can slowly introduce things back in and see how you react to them. So we started by going clean carnivore, and we've been carnivore for almost 3 years now, and gone on and off of it, and struggling with the lure of dopamine response from eating the things that are unhealthy, and just kind of that cycle that is really easy to slip back into. But through that, the just base level of inflammation in my body has gone down so significantly that I'm aware that, like, cancer and so many other diseases feed off of the inflammation in our bodies. So if we can keep inflammation down, then our bodies respond positively. So for me, it's about honoring my body. It's about not squandering the ability that I have to be able to physically move my body now, because there may be a point in the future where it's more difficult. So I need to take advantage of the fact that I'm able to now. And then also battling food addictions and adopting a lifestyle of fasting, because fasting cleans out all of the dead debris and stuff that exists in our bodies. So those have kind of become my personal pillars in an effort to try and reverse some of the allergic or inflammatory responses that I've had in my life.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. And out of all of that, I think one of the kind of the key things that you said is, so often I think most people live out of reaction towards things and not the prevention. And so that's like, I think that's a key thing that we often so forget, is that why time management is probably one of the biggest things. And like my last 3 months has probably been the slackest personally of my own time management. And it's been the most stressed that I've been, because I let my own foundations of where I used to allocate, like my rule is never go beyond 80% capacity. And I've probably been running at like 110 in these last few months. And just that difference of that shift, it's only a 30% shift, but it's enough to have really noticed that those dynamics have been really compromised. And it went from like, I plan, like I'm already in 2025 in my calendar, planning ahead for the things that I want, because I want to be prepared and not caught out. And so many people, when I talk to them, I'm like, oh, have you thought into next week? And they're like, oh, no, like, don't even go there. And it's like, okay, well, if your mindset is so constructed within that 1 week, how are you supposed to be aware of what's happening outside of that? And that's what I love about the ox, lion, eagle, is it's like when you take that eagle perspective and I engage intentionally with that, that's the time frame when I'm looking at that perspective of a year, and I just watch and you look. And so that's what I love about like this community, is you can talk about all the spiritual perspectives that go with that. Whereas if you say to people in like the everyday, it's like, set yourself like an eagle over your own life and engage with the face of God. They're like, what the frick? And so it's like, but those dynamics around that stuff, I think what you said there about the prevention is really key. And information, and Carla will deal with this probably much daily, I would say, is like helping people basically lower inflammation, if I'd be correct, due to like stress and just blood work and stuff. Is that something you see quite common and quite high? I know it's quite massive here in New Zealand, but
It's quite topical, but it's not. I think it's more in the media than an actual issue for most people.
interesting.
Like Erin sounds like she has a clinical need to drop information, but I think a lot of it stems from ultra processed foods as well. A lot of the basic healthy guidelines will drop your information anyways, just by replacing ultra processed foods. Yes, it's always interesting hearing what the media makes noise about and what you actually see. It's yeah, keeps you busy.
That's cool. And I think that's such a and Josh mentioned on it as well. Who do you trust? Who do you not? And that's why I think this journey of when you walk out the journey, you're going to be less jumpy on the media trends because you're educated and you've got that awareness. And I think that like those media trends is almost like being stuck in that day to day, that you're almost getting that PTSD around all of these flipping changes of like, I was told this and now I'm told this and that was happening. But to sit there and be like, what does it look like if I understand my body, and what does it look like when I understand how I respond to said things? Because it's like, I'll notice like if like this week before I fly out tomorrow, and the last 3 days I've been just doing takeaways so I didn't have to do a food shop. And I'm like, oh man, I'm like, even just the difference of 3 days, and it's like the mental clarity is I'll probably drop by like 10%, and just the overall outgoing energy. And it's like, it's just so crazy how fast those parameters change. But what Aaron said, those options are always there and it's readily available. And we so often go for that fast fix. So it's like, how do you encourage people to do delayed gratification? How do you make it? And that's the big thing, is like, how do you make it personal for somebody to be willing to put off the satisfaction of that now to this? And I think so many people's lifestyles today, it doesn't make much difference. They're like, oh, look, nothing's going to require me to do this. I can get away with this, X, Y, and Z. But it's that 5 years down the track where that death by 1,000 cuts, all of a sudden it gets really personal. And then it's like, holy crap, start to run the other direction, and then they overdo it. And so there's just all of these things. And it's like these sorts of conversations I just think are really healthy to have. And I'm a person that's so open as well. Like if you were to sit there and say, I think that information that you've brought to the table is incorrect, then like 100% challenge me on it, or raise it, because that's how we learn. And any one person, I think there's no way any one person can know everything. There's just too much information. And that's why having transparent walls and transparent communication across these subjects is so important. And that's why I love this group, is you can just sit there and hold chats. So mental resilience is honestly an interesting one, Aaron. Like I think there is like, how do you get up and get your kids ready every day? You just have to do it. Like it's just that whole thing. And it's like I don't actually think, choose my words wisely. I think discipline is an art where people actually just get to the point where they know what's good for them and they're willing to do it because they have goals in their life towards something. And so what Josh was talking about with the snowboarding, that's going to be his reason for mental resilience, because he's got a goal that it's associated with. And I think one of the things within so many people is that their identities, people don't have a purpose anymore in today's world because they don't know themselves, they don't know their identity. So why is there a reason to do anything? It doesn't actually matter. And you see kind of the top overachievers that do stuff, they're the ones who are like, okay, we're going to do this. I want to do this for my family. I'm going to do it for this. I'm going to do my business. I'm going to do that. They've all got reasons. And so that whole thing of being like, what's something you're interested in? Like one of my clients the other day loves puzzles. And so I was like, cool, you're going to do this so that you can do the coolest puzzles that you can possibly find. And it was like the weirdest hook I've ever used in a reason in my life. But it was like, puzzles are such a sedentary thing that it's not encouraging fitness. But because it was so personal, it was like, okay, cool. Your goal is to go out and find 10 puzzles in different shops and then go back and get the one that you like. And it was like those sorts of things of like that goal and that hook. But yeah, what's your thoughts, Carla?
Maybe just two things. So one is, Jake, you're speaking about, there's a technique called motivational interviewing where you find the person's why. So in a consultation, you'll apply this method where you get to that person's reason for wanting to change, which I think is quite powerful. But there's extrinsic motivation for reasons why you would do something. If someone says, I'll give you this if you do this, that's extrinsic motivation. And what we find is that extrinsic motivation can become intrinsic. So if you have to start changing a behavior through extrinsic motivations, meaning it's not you getting yourself to the gym, or it's not you going for that hike, it's someone else asking you. Eventually, once it becomes a habit, you're going to start wanting to do it, which I think is quite powerful. And then maybe just another, we did research on habit formation. And we have quite a large data set. Our company's in 40 countries, and they did research on habit formation. And what they found is that the people with smaller goals reach the big ones. So set yourself up for success. Break your goal into as small a step as possible. If you want to start eating healthy and everything's wrong at the moment, start with 1 extra fruit and just do that for 7 to 9 weeks before you add the next one. So set yourself up, and that helps. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to comment on that. I feel like I'm
that's
talking a
amazing.
lot. I'm going to myself now.
No, and I think that, and that goes back to that simplicity, like, and that's the part where, how do you make it achievable for people, like, and that's that key thing. So I think honestly, like, where this conversation's at, I'd love, before we kind of wrap, it's already been an hour, what would this look like for you guys moving forward? Is it simply a discussion group? Is it something where we do want, like, I don't know if you guys want to put time into trying to build something, or if we open up conversations, or what that looks like. But hold it in your heart, and maybe once we get back from the States, we do another one of these and just see from today's conversation what people thought. Was there stuff that was really helpful? Were there things that you didn't get to say that you went away and you thought on, and then you got words for it, and there's a chance to then talk about that. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I'm a very large communicator. I like chucking words out and putting those ideas in front of people. And then if there's a peg that we can kind of stick in the ground, then starting to build a foundation from that. So from what I've kind of written down, and I'll drop this into the chat. Simplicity is really important. Oh yeah, we'll get to Steve and Sharon. And like the simplicity as we kind of go in, the prevention rather than reaction, and then the personal things like family have been really, really key for so many people, and like genetics and stuff like that as well. So but yeah, Steve and Sharon, if you guys want to. Don't make me pick.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I was sort of, like everyone said, it's interesting to hear everyone else's, and it's, yeah, you sort of in your own life can relate to a lot of it. Yeah, you see it. I guess health for me, again, looking back to having a young family, that, when you, so I think to add to what's already been said, one would be belief systems, and also, like someone touched on what, I think about Ian says, is actually bringing in that spiritual side of actually taking your body and dealing with it that way as well. Like praying in tongues and gauging the blood, and just bringing healing into it, that way as well. Another avenue, but I guess as a, growing up in the church and the whole religious system, under the medical system in New Zealand, we just believed what we were told. And so as a young family, we were to the GP every couple of weeks, and then on your journey, as you start discovering, just the holistic way of things, your different way of things, not believing, like we just seen say we vaxxed all our young kids, half of our kids aren't, because we started getting education around it. We started seeing the effects of it, detrimentally to, all that sort of stuff. So to be able to, I guess, as you said, take everyone's knowledge and understanding and journeys to be able to then bring that to a fast track to someone who then comes in, I guess, some way to, well, I don't know, as you're saying, collectively have a funnel, I suppose. And again, the subject so wide and broad that it's not like one funnel. You'd have to, like you were saying, have multiple questionnaires, funnels, whatever specific to different people. But again, we've found diet again. You try one diet, try another one, or change the way you're eating. And again, as you said, everyone's unique, everyone's different. So then you got the thing of, say, like just carnivore diet, like just eating meat. But then you've also got the quality of it. You see it work for one kid, but then it not for others. It's just so many different, I don't know, faucets, avenues. So it's interesting. But then you've got also, so I'm just rambling, but then you also, like we've found, say, with some of our kids, like the biofeedback machine. So with our girls, we knew, and again, it comes down to cost, financial stress, being able to even pay for it. But we did, for our girls, we knew at a young age that there was a high chance of, say, diabetes or whatever. So again, you go down a path and an avenue to make sure that doesn't happen. Whereas if we didn't know that and we're back where we were 20 years ago, the high chances that they probably would have got diabetes. So again, it was all about education, about blah blah blah. So but then you've got, say, phototherapy patches. But then you've got, when we talk to other people about it, we've seen it help me, we've seen it help our kids. But then you have Christians who say, oh, you've got to be wary of crystals. I mean, it's just a whole different things like that. Say Stevie with hyperbarics, there's 7 treatments that New Zealand health system do it, and you can't even get to it through the health system, whereas over in Israel they treat 37 different medical conditions with it, and there's a 20,000 waiting list sort of thing. So there's all these things which one, cost money, but also it's, as I think someone was just saying before, it's New Zealand health system is just chuck a pill at it and you're just dealing with the symptoms. And again, so I guess with Stevie, it was the medical system said it was ADHD and they just wanted to medicate him. But when it's not. It was, trauma to the head. The blood flow wasn't getting to his brain properly. And now, just after 6 weeks of hyperbarics, we can actually see the physical change. Whereas if we just followed the medical system, he'd be medicated and nothing would really be changing. So yes, as you said, it's getting to that core thing of one, changing people's beliefs and educating them properly. But then I guess another broader sense of the tribe is then one, actually helping people to fund it, or not necessarily helping them, but then another thing would be to help educate them and creating income streams. So I guess it branches out in so many different areas and so many different things. It's I don't know. It's just my ramble.
It's definitely not a ramble. It's your journey and the experience. And I think what you've just brought is, I think one of the key things that you just said in all of that is how aware you are for each of your kids. And I think that's like something that should be celebrated and acknowledged and praised, because it's a very, I can only imagine it's a daunting task. I sit there and think about, me looking after my own family one day, let alone having a range of kids, bro. So that awareness and education around that variance, and the trial and error and the consistency, I think is like admirable, bro. So I don't know how you guys do it, and I always sit there and say, oh my gosh, well done. I
guess so. I guess that's another thing. Firstly, is like, as a parent, you put everything into your kids, so they're healthy, they're great. We're not like we're healthy-ish, but we could be better, and we could put more time into ourselves. But so again, it's that mental thing of finding that balance of making yourself important, but not to the detriment of your family, sort of thing. And
it's cool. I appreciate you sharing that, bro. It's great. Sharon.
Well, my personal journeys, I actually firstly appreciate what everybody said here and agree actually with what everybody says, but my personal journey started, somebody gave me a book, The Maker's Diet, I don't know if you know the book. It's where this guy, Jewish guy, with his family grew up the Jewish way, you know, eating the kosher foods and what have you. Excuse me. Then, sorry.
Are you good?
And then he went to varsity and didn't eat the kosher foods and developed Crohn's disease. And then to find a remedy. And at the end of the day, they just got back to eating what was suggested in the word, and then he came back to health. But in that reading that book at the time, I was using an electric blanket. And I said to people, I was married to my electric blanket because it went everywhere. Whether I went camping or what, my electric blanket went with me. And in that book, he said how bad, and I think that was where my frequency knowledge actually started. And he was saying how it affects the frequency of your body. And then I actually asked Father, I said, if this is so, you need to give me a solution on how do I replace a simple thing like an electric blanket. Now, it sounds simple, but your body is so used to that instant heat. And I actually, since then, believe it or not, I sleep between blankets. I don't sleep with sheets, you know, cotton sheets and things like that. And well, since then, cheers. Since then, I've done research, and I'm now at a point where I actually enjoy growing my own like herbs, a moringa tree, you know, I've got, yeah, just growing your own foods that you can go to the garden and actually pick and eat just like that. Is the point where I'm actually at the moment. So totally
Love it.
different perspective.
No, but I think like the key thing is kind of what Carla said around the nutrition is it's finding what works for you. It's the same thing with your lifestyle, and I think that that's where the noise in the system is everyone's, and this is the hard part with social media, is the amount of information that's currently being uploaded to the internet every single day was literally what was uploaded to the internet in the space like 10 years ago. And that's the sort of quantity of data is people sharing their experiences and their journey as if it's the only way to go. And so many people were feeling conflicted, but it's like, that's why I love like having Carla here as well is so vital because it's like, you've got scientific knowledge, experience, understanding down to that base level. And it's like, I'm a person who loves to test. And so I just sit there and I'm like, cool, let's find out what works and what doesn't, because if it's not working, then why would you keep doing the same thing? And so those sorts of things around approach and, you know, finding that difference around like thermal regulation, Sharon, around like how does your body handle the variances in temperature and can it self-regulate and all of those sorts of things. And I just think that that journey is people need to be encouraged so much. And I love what you said, Carla, around that 1% or like the small things. Find one small thing, do it for a period of time, and then do the next thing. And I'd never thought about it from the perspective of what did you call it? You said where did I write it? You were talking about the two different types of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and how eventually that can overlap into their routine. And I was like, it's literally the same sort of thing that you do with the gym is it's like you sit there, you get somebody to do it to the point where it becomes common and like that balance point. And so I think like those basics are so easily forgotten because we make things overcomplicated. And if anything out of all of this, it's like simplicity, curiosity, and then from there community and kind of conversation is something because I know when you get lost in your mind, and like walking through my journey with the ankle and the injury, it's like I live with it every day. And sometimes you just need that outside perspective that's like, oh, try this thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's like a drop of dishwashing liquid into a dirty sink. It's just like, and it clears out. And so those kind of conversations and how that then gets displayed, I think that it's so key. So yeah, I think for today, I've got to bounce because I've got a meeting in 5 minutes. But this has been a really cool start of something. And I mean, I'm pretty keen to do this sort of thing monthly. If you guys are up to it, and maybe we sit there and say at the 3 month mark, depending where things are at, what would this look like to be able to bring other people in? So keep this as the core for now. And then from there, just say, hey, look, like it's a really hard one. Like I'm very aware of you're offering health advice. Like it's a very touch and go area. And so the way that we approach it has to be very wise. And so that is also something that I'm very aware of is it's how do you set this up in a way where advice and curiosity is at the core front of all of this, with encouragement of self-accountability and process and awareness, because I think that that's always the key. And within people, somebody said it today, it's like we know what we need to do, we just don't do it. How do you provide a way to encourage people to have the courage to actually take those steps that maybe seem really overwhelming and simple for us, or but overwhelming for somebody else? And those are the sorts of things that I'd love to kind of tackle in this group, because I think within that, amongst a broad spectrum of people with experience and knowledge, you can actually make a lot of change. And then what Steve said as well, like you know, like if you do have that one person that comes in, they're like, man, we've actually got to this last resort, we've tried 10 years of this, and there's these treatments that cost this and this. Could Ariel, would they potentially be a part of willing to sit there and help change somebody's life for that? Because those are the sorts of things with that journey where that process is vital. So I just wanted to say thank you guys for jumping on. And I'll probably try and get this reposted for others to come back and watch probably by end of day today. I'm just prepping for travel. So I'll try and get this plus debrief of kind of notes that I've taken throughout this. And yeah, just want to say thank you guys for jumping on board for the start of what this will be.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you
See you in
guys.
a week.
Bye.
See you guys. Cheers, Mark, for
Bye.
jumping in, bro.